So before we move on, there's something that is really important. Before we talk more about cross-subsidization, we need to first tell you what we don't want to talk about in this lecture. What are some things that many people feel that is cross-subsidization, but actually it's not? So the first thing is that subsidization is not cross-subsidization. So I know it's confusing, but anyway, let me try to explain. Subsidization is one of the strategies that you may apply to try to get to critical mass. Remember that? And what's that? That is for the platform to find some money from the investors, from the bank, whatever, for the platform to pay by itself to attract customers, to attract the initial customers. Very famous example are taxi hailing and mobile payments. So for most of the mobile payments, they try to give discounts to new users, right? Because if you don't have users, there's no way for you to attract merchants. Or for taxi hailing, that's the same thing. When Uber, for example, enters a market, enters a city, they give discounts to drivers and they give discounts to consumers. If you, as a passenger, you register for Uber in that new city, then typically you get, let's say, 200 NT dollars, something like that, as your money that you may use to take Uber. Or if you are drivers, you also get some kind of discounts or in some sense subsidy. Typically, you earn by driving someone to the destination, right? There is a typical fare, and for the beginning or at the initial stage, you get more than that. That's also subsidization. All right. So subsidization obviously is a growth strategy. You hope that once you get enough consumer, you are going to cancel your subsidization strategy. If you keep doing that, that's going to be unreasonable, right? Subsidization is a lot of money. You don't want to do that forever. You want to use subsidization to grow so that eventually you get to your critical mass, and afterwards you don't need to subsidize anymore so that you may make money. Okay, that's the idea. And you may think about there are some companies, they are keeping subsidizations all the way. Then that's not subsidization. Then that's cross-subsidization. Okay, Google is trying to be nice to searchers, right? We don't pay anything for many, many years, right? Why is that? Because advertisers are trying to reach searchers, so they pay to Google so that there is no money paid by searchers. All right? Google believe this is the best way to generate revenues. That's why Google choose to do that. That's why Google keeps the strategy of not taking money from searchers for so many years. Even after Google has reached some kind of critical mass, Google still don't take anything from searchers. Why is that? Because Google believes this is better to get revenues. All right? If there's a revenue, if there's a thing that you plan to do for many, many years, even after you get critical mass, then that's not subsidization. That's cross-subsidization. All right? So we don't care about the term actually, but we care about what do you want. Do you want to grow or do you want to get revenue? Well, that's different story and that's different strategies. Another thing that sometimes some people get confused is price discrimination. Price discrimination is something we mentioned in the past, right? One example we mentioned to you is that if you are doing this high-speed rail service in Taiwan, then you do have some typical adults and you have some students, right? And what you do is that you may set different prices for different types of consumers. That's one way to do price discrimination. Another way to do price discrimination is that maybe what we want to do is that we want to give some different options to consumers so that they may choose from. Okay, and here we're going to talk about this one. So In many cases, you see that there are some sellers, they give options to consumers. And the reason is that there are some consumers that are so different. All consumers are different in some sense, but always when you are doing some service, you know, consumers are not the same. Some people are more willing to use your service, some people are not, alright? So if you want to attract everybody, you need to set a very low price. If you just set one price, then in that case, why don't you set different options so that for some people that who are not so willing to pay, you give them a low quality product with lower price. But for some others who are willing to pay more, you give them higher quality product and then charge them more money. Alright? So let's take a look at the reason. The reason for doing price discrimination in that way is that we know consumers are heterogeneous. Consumers are different. Because consumers are different, there's no reason to just create one product. You should create multiple products, multiple versions of products, multiple quality levels, so that different consumers pay different things to get different things that they want. Okay? So it's fine to say that some users are subsidized, especially if you see some free users. Some users, they don't pay. That's possible. But even if we say some users are subsidized, we don't say the company is doing cross-subsidization, alright? Because the purpose is different. When we say cross-subsidization, the purpose is to use one side to attract the other side. When we say price discrimination, the purpose is that consumers are different, so you create different products. So here the example is music streaming. Well, for example, there are YouTube Music, Spotify, KKBox. We all know that these companies offer some kind of free options, okay? So you are allowed to just enjoy YouTube Music, to enjoy Spotify, KKBox, if you don't want to pay. But we all know if you don't want to pay, let's enjoy some advertisements, alright? If you don't want to look at or to get bothered by those advertisements, pay some money. Or if you are a student, get some discounts or something like that. But what's the most important is that there are free options and paid options. These companies know that there are all kinds of consumers. There are some consumers, they don't want to watch those advertisements. They don't want to have advertisements, and they are willing to pay more. Then why not just charge them? There are also some consumers, maybe a lot. They are okay to get some advertisement, but they don't want to pay. So if that's the case, maybe it's best to generate some revenues from them by having them advertisements. Alright? So the reason to do price discrimination is completely different from doing cross-subsidization. The reason to do price discrimination by creating multiple kinds of products is because consumers are different. They all lie at the same side, but they are different. That's why you serve them in different ways.